Trump is a villainous dictator and a threat to democracy. No, he's actually the hero of traditional values fighting for everyday workers and the middle class. Or wait, is it possible he's neither? Believe it or not, the mainstream media, fickle as they are, actually used to love Donald Trump. For decades, Trump was splashed across New York tabloids on late-night shows and showing up on Hollywood red carpets. He wasn't always loved, but he was definitely a celebrity fixture. But the moment he launched his campaign as a Republican, everything changed. Almost immediately after he announced his run in 2015, the coverage flipped. He went from reality TV mogul to political lightning rod, a magnet for criticism in a way that we've never seen before. But the question is, why? And how did that happen? How did the media get us all to polarize so dramatically that now some see President Trump as an actual authoritarian, borderline dictator, and others see him as a hero and a savior of the republic? Well, to answer that well, this video would have to be a lot longer, but there is one thing I never see mentioned that in my opinion really gets to the heart of it, and it might not be what you think. There's one word you need to know, and that is archetype. Archetypes are ancient story roles our brains recognize instantly. Think David versus Goliath in the Bible. These patterns are hardwired, good versus evil, hero versus villain. And here's the thing, the media taps into them constantly. Just look, the hero, the villain, the trickster, the wise elder. All archetypes that play a role in what we understand of the broader story. But this isn't just for movies. This kind of archetypal framing flows into brand and ad campaigns for products as well, and even in news media for politicians, presidents, and political parties. We like to believe we're being logical, but half the time our brains are just reacting to these story patterns we've seen forever. The archetype gets triggered and we feel it before we even realize it. That's the power of storytelling. Because the truth is, we can't know everything about any public figure, right? And yet, the discomfort of not knowing compels us to buy into the archetype because it fills those gaps for us. So if I can't make a logical explanation as to why someone is villain, but the media frames them that way, I can comfortably buy into that framing because I assume they did their homework, so they know more than me. But what if that's not entirely the case and they actually have a different motive? Well, just look at how Trump is portrayed across the media spectrum. First, I'm not going to tiptoe around it. Most of the big mainstream networks lean left, like CNN, MSNBC, ABC, and even the BBC. And it shows up in how they frame Trump. He's definitely in villain territory with them. He's not just wrong, he's dangerous. He's a threat to democracy itself. The headlines tend to hammer that same theme over and over again. That mainstream narrative is one that tends to get pushed on anyone that's considered a threat to the establishment. Although the negative coverage on Trump does take it to a new level. Then swing over to Fox or conservative podcasts and suddenly it's flipped. Trump isn't a danger, he's a fighter. Sometimes even a martyr, the last honest man standing in a swamp of corruption. Both sides are emotionally compelling, but which one is telling the truth? And how does that work on masses of people? Well, the answer is it works really well. It works because we've been trained to respond to these archetypes, which is what they are. Think about it. You know who the hero is in a movie right from the start. Why? Well, because you get to see their humanity, their struggles. You root for them. You're given a lot of context about them and their journey. You get to hear from them, their hopes, their dreams, and so on. When you see these guys, your brain goes, protagonist. This is who I'm going to go on this journey with. But what about the antagonists? The moment they appear, you feel danger. Suddenly, they're stripped of context, of humanity, of human struggle, and are reduced to a character to be defeated. We rarely hear from them in their own words, but we hear a lot about them and how bad they are. And sure, we've heard a lot from Trump in his own words, but mostly clipped in sound bites, often stripped of context and spun to fit a narrative. The art of persuasion and visual storytelling isn't about facts and context. It's about story and emotion. Marketers know this too. That's why brands lead with messaging that sells archetypes. Just look at this brand archetype wheel. Political media uses the exact same playbook. Trump isn't reported on like a person. He's packaged like a character or a caricature even. To one side, the savior, to the other side, the devil. Okay, but let's pause for a second because here's where it stops being clever and starts becoming downright chilling. If the media effectively casts someone as an archetype and we buy into it, don't we stop thinking critically about that person? And maybe we don't even see them as human anymore. They're just a character in a story. And here's where it gets even darker. A recent survey found that 38% of Americans said it would be somewhat justified to unalive Trump. And that number climbs to 55% among left-leaning respondents. Let that sink in. Over half the people on one side of the political spectrum think unaliving a sitting president is justifiable. When you see numbers like that, it should make you pause, not because of what it says about Trump, but because of what it says about us, about how easily we can be emotionally manipulated, about how quick storytelling can override reason, nuance, and basic human decency. So how did we get here? I would argue the mainstream media had its way with us for almost a decade now. It went from largely praising Trump before his presidency to later being the loudest voice in the room condemning him over and over again and telling all of us that we should be afraid, and many of us bought into it. But don't get me wrong, this isn't me saying there aren't very real and legitimate reasons to dislike and completely disagree with many things he's said and done and continues to do. But it is me saying he's simply not the villain and not the hero, because he's human. And humans do good things and bad things. And while that logic can't explain everything away, it can help us to see beyond these archetypes that the media creates for us and start to see the nuance. Better yet, start to seek the nuance. Because when you recognize that the media is selling you an archetype, you can decide not to blindly follow the story being set up for you. You can choose to stop being a pawn in someone else's game. That is the beginning of thinking critically and thinking for yourself. Until next time, stay curious and stay grounded. Thanks for watching. If you liked that video, check out this video next. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. I drop a new video every week.